Automation Nation, Automation Nation, Automation Nation, around the nation, Automation Nation, Automation Nation, Automation Nation, around the nation, around the nation, around the nation. Welcome to the Automation Nation podcast, the show for business leaders, tech aficionados, and those who are just simply curious about where technology and business are going. Automation Nation is your gateway to understanding automation, AI, and the future of business. Don't get left behind. Tune in now and subscribe for more. Ladies and gentlemen, those who are behind the screen, we are on the other side, and the other side is now open. Welcome to the Automation Nation podcast, folks. We are live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, X, and somewhere else. Oh, we're going to be actually going live on Jeff's page as well. If you're on the Automation Nation page, you'll see us there. And if you are listening to the recording of this from the podcast platform, all those who can hear the sound of my voice, I want you to make sure you look into the description to connect with our guests, because there's always going to be something that you learn, and the best way to use what you learn is take action and gain more understanding. And so my guest today is Jeff West. And when I talk about gaining understanding, there is a level of understanding you need when it comes to sales, when it comes to delivering your service, your product, no matter what you're doing. Now, Automation Nation podcast, we're talking a lot about automating processes and doing things better and how to be more efficient. But you won't have the need to be efficient if you don't have any customers. Jeff, you can't be efficient with no business. So I know you have been helping people figure out how to overcome objections, do better in business so that they can provide their product or service. I'm going to read a little bit of your bio to give you an intro, and then I want you to unleash this wisdom onto the world. And if you have a question while you're listening to this, please drop it in the comments, because we are live, like I said. So the worst question is the one that you should have asked that you didn't. So ask it while you got the opportunity. Okay. So my guest, Jeff West, has over 30 years of sales experience, sales leadership, and entrepreneurship. Jeff is now a best-selling and award-winning author, speaker, and leadership coach. This is good. His books, The Unexpected Tour Guide and Said the Lady with the Blue Hair, co-authored with Director of Sales legend Lisa Wilbur, have earned recognition from the Axiom Business Book Awards, the National Indie Excellence Awards, and the American Book Fest Awards. His latest book, Streetwise to Saleswise, Streetwise to Saleswise, Become Objection-Proof. Now, this is big. And Beat the Sales Blues. He co-authored this with Bob Burg and the author of a Go-Giver series. A lot of us know that. Jeff has been helping people and businesses overcome objections. Today, Jeff, I welcome you, and hopefully your insight and wisdom can help us overcome more of those objections that are sure to come. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Rob. I am so honored to be on here with you today. It's a pleasure. Glad you're having me.
Well, it's a pleasure's mine. And like I said earlier, no matter what you're doing, no matter what kind of business you're in, you have to sell. You got to sell, which is essentially telling people what you got. People don't want to hear what you have. That's what an objection is. And I want to get into, first of all, just give us an intro. What brought you to the point you are now, and then we're going to get into how you help people overcome these mountains called objections.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Rob, my background is in sales. I've been in sales pretty much my whole life, right out of college. I had originally planned to teach, and when I finished my degree, my wife at the time needed to still finish up her degree. There were no teaching jobs open. So I ended up in sales by accident or by default, or as I look back on it now, I think it's probably more divine intervention. But that first year that I was in sales, I ended up making about 50% more than I would have made as a teacher. So that was certainly a draw to stay in sales. But then my wife and my daughter picked up this nasty habit. They wanted to live under a roof and eat food and stuff. And so I had to keep working in sales because teachers didn't make enough for that. but I had a long career in sales, both in three different industries, in musical instruments, then in industrial uniforms. But the longest part of my career was in the insurance industry. And I was actually field leadership with a major Fortune 500 company, insurance company, and did that for 20 years, actually. The last 10 of it, I was the state manager that covered the Houston, Texas area. And so I've been very blessed, and I've learned a lot of things over the years. And as I decided to retire from that industry, I wanted to start coaching and speaking and teaching and working with entrepreneurs and working with solopreneurs and also working with salespeople at different levels to teach them principles that'll make them much more successful. And
Mm.
when you get down to it, in sales, it's exactly the same for a business owner. It's exactly the same if you're an individual, then you're just trying to develop your own thing out there. Because at its core, sales at its very best is being focused on the other person, the person with whom you're speaking with, about how their interaction with you, if they do business with you, makes some part of their life better, either their personal life or their business life. And when you make that connection, if you're in sales, you're connecting them with a company. You got a person with a need and a company with a solution. You put them together, you get paid because you're the matchmaker. If you're a solopreneur or an entrepreneur, or you own your small business in whatever fashion, with you it's the same thing, but you're just the company and the person who's making the match happen. So
Mm.
it's been so much fun to do this over the years.
Oh wow, that's good. I love it. I love it. And so, Jeff, we're powered by Simply Automate. We ask all our guests this first question. Everyone, if you could automate one thing in your personal life, what would it be?
If I could automate one thing in my personal life, it would more than likely be little reminders that I try to set up with Siri on my phone now, but reminders about important things that I have coming up, schedules, things of that nature. If it's in a business context, it'd be a little bit different. It would be part of my prospecting process that I use, because I'll work with companies and do speaking gigs and that kind of thing. So it would be making that an automated system more.
I love it. That's good. That's good. All right, let's get into this objections. All right.
Right.
Let's talk about this thing. Why do you say objections no longer need to be something we fear? I mean, because I tell you this, that's one of I call myself a pretty decent speaker as long as I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
When it comes to someone saying no, it literally becomes kryptonite for me. Literally. And I've done all this practice and training and watched the greatest. I mean, give us some advice. Come on, how do we how do we remove the fear?
Even if we weren't live going out, I'm glad you and I are having this conversation, because this is my wheelhouse. I can help you. But
Yes.
when you get down to it, the book is called Streetwise to Saleswise, Become Objection Proof and Beat the Sales Blues. And objection proof is basically both a philosophy and a methodology where sales professionals are able to work effectively with the objection process, both leading up to and including the actual sales conversation. And so in the book Streetwise, we teach that process, and we do it through a great story. I'm a person who likes to write fiction. I write business parables. I want to take a story and teach things rather than just say, okay, Rob, this is exactly how you need to do this. I'd rather tell you a story and work it into the storyline and let you learn it because you'll retain it just because of the way the neurology of our brain works.
Mm.
But the idea of becoming objection proof is pretty simple. And it's something that everybody can learn. And what I would tell you, and what you're facing personally, has the no's bother you. The first thing you kind of have to do is calculate what a no really does mean and doesn't mean to you. I read a book back. One of my very first books in sales that I ever read was by a guy named Frank Betcher. And the title of the book was How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. You got that one? But and in Frank's book, he taught a concept where you instead of thinking, okay, I got to know I didn't make any money. I got to know I didn't make any money, and going through that, he taught you to kind of average it out, see how much you're earning based on a block of calls. And for most people, the idea of getting a no, it messes with them, but it's not so much that they got to know. Sometimes it's they think, they feel like they're the only one who's getting a no. So inside, they almost feel like they're doing something wrong if they get a no. And the truth is, we're all going to get no's. As great as we are, not everybody is going to want everything that we do. And so in the book, we draw, you take a gallon of no's for a quart of yeses, and you're doing pretty good on that. But in the process of becoming objection proof, to help you with what you're doing in your system, first thing I will tell you is the easiest way to reduce your objections. One more quick thing too. Most people will use the term overcoming an objection. Overcoming an objection. That's what a lot of corporate sales training focuses on. And that's all well and good. But the truth is, if you just spend your time teaching people how to overcome an objection, how to respond, okay, if they say A, you say B, and make that work, what you get into is almost like a ping pong match. Well, they said this, pop, and I said that, pop, and they said this, pop, and I said that, pop. And when you get through, nobody wins.
Right.
But if instead, I want to kind of refocus you a little bit, rather than thinking about overcoming an objection, I want you to think about it differently. How many people in our world ever wants to be overcome? It might be okay to be overcome with joy, be overcome with happiness, but to be overcome by somebody or by something, we don't like that. And in the sales process, when someone has an objection, that's their opinion of the scenario right at that time. And if people don't like their opinion being overcome, you don't need to look any further than our political landscape in this world. Know that everybody is kind of touchy about that. And so what we teach is a kind of a process where, number one, you start off by handling your common objections, or you're working with your common objections during the process, during your sales conversation. So if there's an objection that you consistently get, mark that down and think about what the solution is, because many of those you'll actually be able to work with during your conversation up front. And if you talk about the issue up front along with a solution in the sales conversation, it's not an objection, it's education. But if you think you're through and then they voice it, it's an objection. So we want to go for education over objection. So get as many of them handled. If you're getting some consistent ones, like your price is too high, or I don't need your widget today because I've got 14 widgets in the closet, that kind of thing, whatever your particular objection is, think of it in terms of that. And then when you do get an objection, take a little process. First thing that we teach is, number one, control your own emotions. Because what happens in your brain when you get a no, for most people, that no is a little bit of rejection. There's a little fear of, I won't make an income. There's some things that are going on inside the neurology of your brain that are negative, that will generate a negative emotion. Well, then the brain sends a little electronic shock down to the rest of your system, and in the middle of your body, you start feeling funny. You don't enjoy it. You get that uneasy feeling in your stomach, and so you want to pull away from it. So the first step is to control your emotions so that you don't do that, because if you get anxious, you're going to make your prospect get anxious. But then after that, the next thing is to empathize with their concern. Say, let them know, hey, that's a valid issue that you should consider. It's perfectly okay that you do. And then say, but is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions to make sure I understand? And at that point, you dig a little deeper, because lots of times that first objection is not the real objection anyway. It's just kind of a stall, or maybe they don't even know why they're not comfortable moving forward. But
Mm-hmm.
if you let them know up front, hey, your objection's valid to me. I can see how that might be a concern. It puts you on a level with them where they're willing to open up a little more. And then when you say,
Mm-hmm.
do you mind if I ask you to help me see that a little bit more from your perspective? Tell me what you're thinking, and you
Yeah.
dig a little bit. Then after you've done that, it gives you the opportunity to isolate it, make sure that it's the only objection, because if it's not, you'll need to get the rest of them out there. But then you can help them see it through reframing it into a little bit different position, and you offer them basically you work with them to find a solution that neutralizes that objection. Then you're helping them. For example, if someone is a real estate client or something like that, and they're getting ready to buy the house, but at the last minute they're saying they don't think that they want the house. It's too far from town. Well, a lot of salespeople would just immediately tense up. They wouldn't know what to say. "Well, it's not far from town." That doesn't work. So, but if you empathize, you say, well, I can certainly understand how that might be the case. Can you give me a little bit of an better perspective about what is it in town that you like? What is it
Mm-hmm.
that you're looking for? And they say, well, we're used to living 5 minutes away from a hospital, or 5 minutes away from a movie theater, grocery store, restaurant, whatever. Then you can say, now, those are important things to you? Of course. Then when you get to the reframing part, where first you would isolate, say, is there any other reason you wouldn't want to move forward? They say no. Say, well, great. Well, let me ask you this, because might help you see this from a little bit different angle. I just found out that they're building some of these amenities locally, so you actually would have them within, probably within 10 minutes of you anyway. Would that be something that would be close enough that it would make this a better issue for you? And when you do that, you're helping them find their own solution, because it's not about what you want, it's about what they want. And so then when you do that, you can offer your solution, and ideally give them a little social proof showing that you've got other clients that have worried about things that yeah, you have made very happy in your process. And then you can move forward in your sales process. So we always celebrate, don't try to overcome an objection, but work with your prospect to find a solution that works for them.
Mm. Listening. You said listening and evaluating those issues that you have. And then once you evaluate those issues that you have that you're running into, you'll have solutions for those. And then you can actually address those as things to be aware about to your
Right.
customer or your prospect. And this will also comfort everything. The other thing I really got, and it's something that helped me too, a training, and you just helped really confirm it's factual, and it's the psychology behind how you move forward. And so however you think about something is going to predicate how you move forward.
Absolutely.
So if you feel rejected to any extent, how motivated are you going to be? And then energetically, as you were saying, what is the person you're speaking to, what are they going to feel? Because dogs are the only ones that can sense things in the invisible. Humans have that capability too.
I like it. Well,
Interesting, Jeff. Wow.
the process you're talking about uh, is so spot on, because people they're living in their world. They're dealing with their issues. And you get a salesperson sometimes, or even a company owner who's talking about, this is what we do, it's great, blah, and going forward with that. There's a little secret about sales. People actually don't care how great your company is. They don't care how great your product or service is, and they don't even care how great you are as a salesperson or the owner of the business. They care about one thing, and that's what's going on in their world and how it affects their life. That's not meaning they don't have kind thoughts and philanthropic thoughts toward others. I don't mean that, but I'm talking about as far as the business context goes. That's what they're thinking. So I train company owners that when you're working on your value proposition, most people misunderstand it, because your value proposition has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with your company, nothing to do with any of that. Your value proposition is 100% whatever their value, how their world gets better from the interaction. It's their value from your proposition. And so as you're getting your processes together and your automations together, when whatever thing you're doing in a sales process, you've got to be focused on their value from your proposition. Because one of the things all this does when you're focused that way, and then when you work with an objection with the objection proof process, you're actually creating a bond with your prospect and then your client. Because what happens in our brain, every decision that we humans make is made with a combination of logic and emotion. There are no exceptions. As a matter of fact, studies have been done where someone's brain sections that control the logic and the brain section that control the emotion couldn't communicate. There was an interruption in the frequency. Those people couldn't make decisions. And what happens is that brain impulse happens, we get feeling one way or the other. If it's a negative emotion, we want to run away. If it's a positive emotion, though, on the other hand, it gives us a sense of belonging, a sense of safety, a sense of trust, a sense of joy, happiness. When that happens, we like that feeling. So when we intentionally work with the brain's neurology and we combine those positive emotional experiences with the logic of what we're trying to accomplish at the time, it creates what I refer to as a fusion point. And it engages, I call it engaging the science of persistence, because that's the brain neurology. So when you create that fusion point, they're more comfortable moving forward. They feel like it's a win-win situation, which it would be. And so you keep that happening. And when you are focused on their value from your proposition, and then you handle an objection the way I said, where you're not trying to tell them they're wrong, say, hey, I get how that'd be something you'd want to consider, and you help them work through a solution, you're creating multiple times where their positive emotional center of the brain fires and they get a good feeling inside, and you're connecting that with the logic, and it makes them more likely. A higher percentage will say yes to what you want them to do next.
Neurological science. That is, I love it. I love the neuroscience element about it and just the psychology and perspective. And the more you understand those components, the better off you'll be,
Absolutely.
the better off you will be, coming up on this word empathy. We're right in that space too. Empathy is a word that it's just starting to get famous, thank goodness it's coming around, but it's been around forever. But, over the last 10 years or so, I'm seeing a breakthrough. I'm seeing a break. I guess because we're in this mindfulness era. This is kind of the era where people are becoming more aware of what's possible. But
Right.
and they're realizing that empathy really is a cool thing. Empathy is not sympathy, for those who sometimes mix it up. Like, sympathy is feeling sorry for someone, but empathy is more so and wanting to gain understanding
Absolutely.
from a supportive element and perspective. So how important is empathy, though, in becoming objection proof? I have a hypothesis in my head, but I want to hear what the master has to say.
Oh, and empathy is probably the most important part of the process, because what happens is this: most people in a sales conversation, and I avoid the term sales presentation because I think it sets salespeople up to think incorrectly. Because sales presentations make you think you're supposed to tell them about your product and tell them about your service and tell them how much it costs and tell them why they need it. And there comes a point in a sales conversation where you do have a presentation and you are making your recommendations. But I use the term sales conversation because a truly great sales interaction is a conversation. You're asking questions, they're asking questions, you're getting to know things about them. But the reason empathy is so very important is because most salespeople that are in a sales process where they're the receiver, where they're going to be the potential client, they walk into it almost expecting a little bit of a push. They expect the salesperson to push it a little bit. They're going to push back when it happens. So that's kind of their preset. And what that does basically, that negative emotion that's in the brain connecting with logic, that creates a collision point. And on a collision point, people push back. They don't say yes to you. They don't want to do business with you. They push back. But when you're handling an objection, working with an objection, and they were kind of expecting you to battle them a little bit, even though not a big battle, but they were kind of expecting a little bit of a verbal debate per se. When you don't do that, when you acknowledge their concern and you start working through that process because you truly want to understand it from their perspective, it totally takes the conversation in a different direction, and it makes that connection that you want. Because, you know, I have a high level of empathy, and I know that my first sales job, the general manager who hired me, is actually my second sales job. The general manager who hired me said he almost didn't do it because I didn't have the experience that he would normally look for, but they gave salespeople certain tests, and my empathy score was off the chart. And so I have a good sense. I can read body language. I can read verbal cues. I have a pretty good sense of what people are thinking, but you never really know everything on it.
Right.
But having empathy doesn't mean you necessarily know exactly what someone else is experiencing, but you know they're experiencing something, and you verbally and in your own body language, you show them that you care about that. That's
Mhm,
important, and you
mhm.
you give value to that rather than saying, "No, that's not right. You need to do this."
Right, right. That's big because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about what they care about. Added that last piece to it because you said that
Absolutely.
earlier.
Yeah.
Ca-
Well,
Care about
people.
what I care about. You said something else also about the value proposition. You said
Mhm.
you said propose your proposition for their to bring them value. What did you say again? That was a good one.
All right. Well, most companies, they teach that they have a value proposition. And in their eyes, their value proposition is, okay, we offer this service at this price, but then we also do this and we do this and we do this and we don't charge extra for it. So they kind of think of that as their value proposition. And the truth is, I respectfully disagree when they think that. Because what the real value is in a proposition is, how does the person in front of you, how does their life get better? How does their personal life or their professional life, whatever is appropriate based on what the service is or the product is, how does their life actually get better if they use this product, or they use me to help them do this? And it may be that they, in an automation system like what you're talking about, it could be that the service that gets them automated gives them more free time with their family. So the value of that kind of thing, their value from your proposition isn't that it's an automated service at this price. Their value from your proposition is, I get to spend more time with my family, and it's only going to cost me a little bit to make that happen. And so
Mm,
it's about focusing on what the real change for them is if they work with you.
that's good. Love that, Jeff. Love it. All right,
Thanks, sir.
we're coming in for a landing. Our last couple questions here. All right, our second simply question of the day: if you could automate one thing in your business life, you could simply automate one thing in your business life, what would it be?
That for me it's definitely it's the way I set up a prospecting system. And I actually do that to a great deal. I mean, I have I know when reaching out to companies for specific things, as far as working with their sales teams or working with the owner of a small business who's trying to figure out a sales process, I can do really good things for them. So that's about how to make that contact system happen. And I actually, in the storyline of Streetwise to Saleswise, we use a lot of Bob Burg's training on objection proof and on some leadership things. We use a ton of my training on sales techniques and on leadership as well. So it's a rare collaboration when you, on a parable, when you have both authors who really have this chops when it comes to sales training. So that's one of the things that Bob and I have loved at doing about this. And we've actually been friends for 20 years, so that's not a surprise, I guess.
Oh, that's
The,
cool. That
but
is
the
fantastic.
but it's
Wow.
it's about that, and kind of teach how to automate your prospecting process in the
Mm-hmm.
storyline in Streetwise, and
Mm,
it's a lot of fun.
that's good. That's good. Speaking of Streetwise, tell us Streetwise to Saleswise. Give us your best piece of business advice, and then let folks know how they can connect with you, reach out to you. And by the way, if you listen to this, you scroll down to the description. You'll find Jeff's information if you're listening, or just go if you're on the podcast, scroll over. If you're on social, swipe somewhere. All right. Yeah, Jeff, drop it on us.
All right. Well, Streetwise to Saleswise, the best advice in that book, in my opinion, is when it teaches the process and the mindset of being completely focused on how the person in front of you benefits from what you're asking them to do next. Excuse me. But excuse me. That's a joy of live shows, isn't it? But
Yeah, I was drinking
but
the
it's
same time.
but it's in everything that you do in sales. Be focused on how does the person in front of me, even if it's just the administrative assistant who greets you at the door or answers the phone, can I make their life better from the interaction with me? Be focused on their benefit. That's the most important thing.
Mhm.
And then how to follow me, the get the book, Streetwise to Saleswise.com is the best way to go to get the book, because it's the page that gives information. Your listeners can actually download the first 2 chapters for free and see if it's something they think they'd want to do. And it's available in both audiobook and Kindle book, and also in hardcover and paperback.
Mm.
But the thing I think I like the best about it, I like the audiobook. My favorite is my favorite by far, even though the book's great and the storyline's great. I'll tell you just a bit about the storyline in a second if we have time. But I love the Audible because you can drive around your vehicle. It's like you're listening to a sales mentor. You're listening to someone right side by side with you in real life situations, not just telling you what to do. So it's pretty cool. But
Wow.
the story's set in New Orleans, which is one of my favorite places. It's got a music background, which so do I. It's got characters, street singers. It's got Dixieland bands. It's got so many things weaved into the story as we follow this young man who's a little bit of a smart aleck, and he gets fired on the first day of the show. So,
Oh, wow.
and we take him through a growth period. So.
That's exciting. Sounds like a nice edutaining experience.
It should be. My goal when I write a parable, which no, like I say, that's my favorite genre to write in. My goal is for the storyline to be so good that people forget they're learning something, and they get through and they go, "Wow, I know how to do things now." And it's because I want the storyline I want it to grab them on the first page and keep them the whole time.
Yeah, that's good. I want you to keep their attention the whole time as well. I want you, if you're listening to this, check out Jeff's book. If you have a business, even if you don't have a business, because I think that being able to communicate with other humans in your most effective manner is probably the thing that we're all striving for. So Jeff can help you do that and overcome those objections. Thank you, Jeff, for being on the Automation Nation podcast. Thanks for
My
all
pleasure.
those who are watching. And again, remember, the only dumb question is the question you didn't ask. And remember that knowledge is power, but wisdom is the proper application of that knowledge. So find a way to apply the knowledge. Until next time, we'll see you. Automation, Automation Nation, Automation Nation, Automation Nation.